Well, hello, good people. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. This season is hard. It's just terrible. There's no way to put this any other way. It's been a complete disappointment. You know, we all really knew that this season was not going to be good. Because of the lack of movement, the players that left, the change in defensive philosophies with Mike Zimmer, the no confidence in re-signing any of your coaches, and so on. So we shouldn't be surprised at how bad this season has been, but yet we're still surprised how bad this season has been. Be that as it may, be that as it may, we have to pick up the pieces and start all over. And literally, I don't know where this goes from here. If we're going to do what we've always done, which is the Joneses, then I don't know how it's going to get any better. Now, here's the thing. Everybody's getting excited about the prospect and the idea of Deion Sanders and his son, Shedeur. But I don't think people have really thought this through because here's the thing. We know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen is the day after the NFL season ends. The day after the NFL season ends, you're going to have teams that they haven't already fired their coach that will be firing theirs, and then there'll be the mad scramble for the coaches that are out there. Okay? Because you need to get the coach in place. Now, what the Cowboys always do, they take their time. We literally waited a week of having Jason Garrett coming to the office like everything's hunky-dory and things before they finally let him go. But we know the Cowboys always wait to the last minute to do anything, in which case it ends up always hurting them. You may not get the best prospect. You may not get the best coaching staff. You are literally getting the crumbs that are left over. Okay, be that as it may, first day of the offseason, coaches are getting fired, teams are trying to hire and get their guy. Okay. You need to get that guy in place because you start out in March doing OTAs. You start out, as soon as the offseason's over, figuring out what kind of philosophy are we going to have? What kind of players do we need to fit what we're going to do? What players do we want to keep and go, right? So the problem here is if you are able to entice Deion away from Colorado, which is ready to become a national powerhouse, that they're on the cusp of really turning that thing around and being a great program again. You need to get Deion Sanders as soon as the season is over so you can start making plans to put the pieces in that are going to fit your system, right? Unless you are like the number one pick, I don't see how the NFL would allow you or allow Deion Sanders to basically tell other teams, don't draft my son, and guide and steer him to his team. I don't see how the NFL could allow that. And if they were allowed to do that, the problem with that is now players are going to do this in the future to basically determine where they're going to go. And that, of course, ends up messing up the whole system all the way around. It's pot luck. You're supposed to draft the person that you want right then and there. The players, you don't get that. You don't get that opportunity. And if Deion were able to do that, then that would not work. I can't see how the NFL would say, you're good with that. I mean, let's say hypothetically they were able to do that. I can guarantee you that they would take draft picks away from you if they allowed it to happen at all. Right? Now, what I've been hearing from people on ESPN and things is they'll say, the team that drafts Shedeur Sanders will then hire Deion Sanders. Okay, that's one way to get away from the NFL looking at you with a side eye that said you guided him here because you have plausible deniability. It may be that you've guided him there to do that. But here's the problem with doing that. The draft isn't until late April. The week after the draft, you got players that are there with your team doing rookie OTAs. You're going to hire a head coach after the draft and then try to get a staff that works with them? Now, in the Cowboys' case, basically Jerry Jones hires all the coaches and the assistants and all that and basically tells the head coach, here's your staff, which I think is a mistake. I think that's a mistake all the way around. I don't see how you're going to go ahead and have a team together with a coach who's hired around May 1st to implement a system, get a coaching staff, and then try and compete. The second problem I have with that is, how does that work with your dad as your coach on the professional level? I don't know how that works. Do the other players look at that with a side eye and say, well, Dad's going to take care of his son? And so on? I think it sounds really good to think about that and think, oh, yeah, well, we're going to get Deion Sanders primetime in the pros, and we're going to get Shedeur Sanders, a new quarterback. But I'm not sure that everybody's thought it through. So they're talking about this, of course, on ESPN.
All week to get you in here. All week to get you in here. Because, you see it, you hear it, you're a part of the conversation. Everyone is talking about Deion to the National Football League. What is your sense?
Well, Deion said this week that he's got the kickstand down at Colorado. And I believe that he does love being there and influencing the lives of young men. That matters to him. But I also believe that with that kickstand, you can go buy a bicycle and kick a kickstand and wipe out the bike, right? And I think it's up to an NFL owner to go up and kick that kickstand and make it such that the bike comes crumbling down in Boulder and they have to take the bike and transport it to Dallas or whatever city is making a head coaching change. I think he'd like to stay there, but I think it's up to some team to make it worth his while, whether it's with Shedeur Sanders at quarterback or in another way to bring him to their franchise if that's what they want.
Prime to the NFL. Your thoughts, Harry?
I don't like it. I personally believe that Deion is meant to be in college, being a mentor, helping these kids out as individuals, not just with on the field things, but also the way of life and how to walk in and off the football field. And also, when you look at a guy like Deion, right, he played at the highest level. He's the best that ever did it at the cornerback position. When you move to the NFL, you got to deal with the egotistical part of things when it comes to these players, right? Guys making more money than you, feeling like they're higher than they really are. But Deion it understands that part of it. That's why I believe he stays in college, because he truly loves it there and he loves making a difference in these young men's lives.
I think Deion will control where Shedeur goes. I do not believe that Deion's going to go to the NFL with Shedeur. Yeah. Deion has set Shedeur up for success. Going to the NFL with Shedeur would set him up for failure. This is the grown men's league. He's not going to go play daddy's son in the NFL. I don't believe that Deion thinks that that's the best situation, the best thing for his son. I also think, because of what's happened this week, it's way more likely that he stays at Colorado. Colorado's on the verge of flipping a big-time recruit from USC quarterback-wise.
Julian Lewis, who's from Carrollton in Georgia.
I just don't believe that young man would be entertaining. He just decommitted from USC and flipping to Colorado unless he truly believed that Deion wasn't going anywhere.
I look at it for Deion. He would be so influential in the NFL. When you talked about how great his career is, but just his demeanor, his ability to connect with guys, I think that's the toughest part in the NFL. Is now you can't just tell a guy what to do. I think that's where Deion Sanders, whether he wants to stay in college or not, if he goes to the pros, I think that move would be advantageous to him and whatever team that's willing to bring him in. I agree with Dan. I don't see the package deal situation, but I do think if it does happen, guys on that team would be okay with it.
Greeny, I would add this. I'm going to piggyback off what Dan said. If they're able to make the college football playoffs and win the Big 12, do you think, just think about the level of recruiting that Deion would take the Colorado program.
Mm-hmm.
They have fun, they win, you're going to get the notoriety. Why wouldn't people want to go to Colorado to play for Deion?
No, people may want to go to. Look, I don't know Deion. You got some of you may do. I know you know him from your days working together once upon a time at NFL Network. Like I don't know what he wants. Some people want to go to the NFL. There's just a different challenge, a different thing. He's not someone I know. There's no way I can answer that question. What I do know is this whole idea of young players not having respect for older players. He is one of the exceptions to that. Right? Deion Sanders is one of those guys who cuts through that. Young players of today revere him. I know this because you and I live it every Sunday. We work with Randy Moss, and we do this thing called Countdown Cam, okay? Yep. And so current players will come on the set, on a camera as they're walking into a stadium. They're not doing it to talk to me. They're doing it because they hear Randy Moss wants to talk to me, and they all come on, and when they talk to Randy, it's like they're talking to a deity.
Absolutely.
And that's who Deion is. And so if Deion is your coach, I mean, they've all seen this. They all know this. Deion kind of invented the modern NFL with the swagger and everything else that the league is. I think that's a fascinating piece of it. If he decides to go to the NFL, look, I'm in the interesting business. I'm all in on him because he's interesting about it yesterday, because I think this is interesting. We've all heard it. We've all heard the possibility, maybe Deion and Shedeur together to the Raiders or something like that. Here's what Hawk said yesterday about them as a package.
I'm going to go on record and say I love Deion Sanders as the NFL head coach, my number one candidate. I love Shedeur Sanders as an NFL quarterback, my number one prospect. I don't want them together.
No chance.
I do not want to be in the locker room where the head coach and the quarterback are son and father. No. I can't say what I want to say in the locker room. There's going to be, this is grown men. That's a tough situation. I'm just talking from my own perspective.
100%.
Would not want that.
So this is a fascinating dynamic because it is something that at least on some level, Harry, you actually lived.
Yeah, so my wide receiver coach, Terry Robisky, there was a year his son, Brian Robisky, played with us. And what I loved about Coach Robisky and why he was one of the greatest coaches ever is the simple fact that he didn't play favorites. He never wanted us to feel like we had to approach him differently, talk differently in that locker room. And that's the way we went about our business. And Brian understood that. Now, it may have been some stuff like in one-on-ones with defensive players, may have talking about his son, the whole nine, but Robisky was like, I'm staying out of that. That's my son has to deal with that.
For you guys in the receiver room, when you would walk in the locker room, you get that break. Would guys sit there and say, I don't really want to say anything about
Hell
Coach?
no.
You say whatever you want.
We say whatever the hell we want to say point blank period.
You want.
Because that's the
our
relationship.
Coach, we hate him. I mean, you didn't.
But that's the relationship we had with our coach, though.
Yeah.
All right, that's enough of that. But you see my point here on how does that work? Are you basically surrendering the first season? Because, again, I don't know how you can plausibly deny it is to say, well, we hired Deion and his son just magically fell to us in the NFL, which always seems to be, kicking the Cowboys when they're down. I see them kicking us down even more. Alrighty, good people. As always, I appreciate you guys, and I will see you soon. Peace.